We're now joined by Tim Richter. He is the president and the CEO of the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. Tim, good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we saw today the Trudeau government put onto paper, into an act, the proposals it first announced at the Liberal caucus retreat last week. And when it comes to housing, as you know, this bill focuses on the elimination of the GST for rental developments. How significant is that change?
Well, I think it's pretty significant, but I think it's important to remember it's not a silver bullet. We think that I've seen estimates that between 200,000 and maybe 300,000 units that may not otherwise have been produced will be produced. Those are many that are that were shelved for economic reasons, may now become competitive, and others that may have been condominiums now become purpose-built rental. So it's about 200 to 300,000 units, which is a very good start, but it's short of the 2 million or so rental units we're going to need.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're not the only one that's saying it. The CMHC also pointing out to similar numbers when we talk about the number of bills that have to be made before 2030. But, I'm also wondering about your level of concern that when they talk about these rental bills, they're not really putting any stipulations about how much these rental units would actually cost. And as you know, right now, the average rent for a two-bedroom apartment is well over $2,000 a month in many cities in this country. So are you concerned that there was no stipulation about the rental cost?
Well, I think it's challenging for a couple of reasons. One is that you see the Conservatives' plan has stipulated an affordability requirement for a GST cut. The challenge with that is if you require affordability, you're reducing the income that can be that a developer can get from a unit at the same time as you're reducing the GST. So those benefits actually kind of cancel out. So you have to sort of maintain some of that revenue. But one of the things that we know from studies across Canada or across the United States and Europe is that any addition to the rental housing system actually helps create affordability because there's a chain of moves that happen through a system. So, for example, if 100 people move into new purpose-built rental, there's 40 spaces created at the low end of the rental system. So as you think about rental as a system, you're actually creating affordability at the lowest end, even if you're only adding units at the higher end. Hopefully, though, we come up with a system and we come up with a series of investments in the future as part of ongoing efforts to address the housing crisis that will bring in more affordable units as well and further moderate the price.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned the conservative proposals, and certainly there is more of a carrot and stick approach being put forward by the conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, and this is about getting rental units built. He proposes to tie federal infrastructure funding to rental construction, obliging so-called high-cost municipalities to increase their rental stock by 15% annually. What do you make of that kind of proposal?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think both the Conservatives and the government are focusing in on two really important things. One, with the GST component, they're looking at the financial viability of new purpose-built rental. But the second part that they're both zeroing in on is really the idea that municipal government has to be engaged in this process to remove some of the barriers to creating new purpose-built rental housing, as well as streamlining some of the permitting system so that it's faster, right? And that is really going to be important. They're zeroing in on the same issue. They have slightly different approaches. I think the conservative approach is probably a bit more complex and uses more stick than carrot, and the government's approach uses more carrot than stick. But both are zeroing in on the same issue.
Mm-hmm. I wonder, is there the capacity to get more rental units built? You need builders and investors, yes, and this GST rebate may incentivize more action from them. But, we are also facing a worker shortage right now, a skills shortage as well. How does that fit into the equation for governments?
Well, and that's a really good point because, both of these approaches are effectively incomplete. And I think both the Conservatives and the Liberals and frankly the NDP are going to bring forward some other proposals. But we have to really look at a few different things beyond just the financial viability, and the GST cut alone probably won't be enough to get a large scale construction. But we also have to address some of the issues like you've just mentioned. So, do we have the skilled trades to build the housing that we need to get built? Do we have the productivity and innovation in Canadian housing construction? We're building housing now the same way we have 50 years ago, and we're going to have to get a whole lot more productive and lower cost and build faster in order to alleviate some of these challenges. And we're also going to have to think about how are we going to help those who are in greatest need right now while we do all this construction. We identified in the National Housing Code 6 really key barriers, and we're going to have to address all 6 if we're going to have a fighting chance of hitting the 2 million rental housing units we're going to need.
Okay, listen, I only have 30 seconds here, but I do want to get a quick answer from you because the government is promising to bring in more. What more do you want to see in the short term?
I think in the short term, we need to look at something like accelerated capital cost allowance. I think we need to be looking at a homelessness prevention and housing benefit to keep people from falling into homelessness while we're building these new units. And I think we need to really be pushing for that productivity piece, looking at how do we build more housing faster and use some innovation to address our productivity gaps.
Tim, really appreciate the time today. Thank you for that.
Hey, thank you very much.